Okay, let's put another piece of the puzzle together here. So in the National Geographic Gospel of Judas, in the last video, I was showing you there were some things that they left out that they actually edited out of this video. And what they've edited out of it is that the description of heaven, which is supposed to be the greatest secret, is edited out in this National Geographic film, specifically referring to the luminous cloud. And the luminous cloud is where Jesus supposedly came from, that Judas knew about. This was the immortal realm of Barbelo. Let's listen to what he has to say here again. I'm going to show you the text, and then we're going to move on to some new information.
دي ماكلنا بيض كله خراني ماكسيلاك دي تيذي باي مالكوث الله الكاثوليك يثيرث أنا بلمحظ طب ليه ناهيروث كوكاخ فاكر طهير يثير من كله خراني التيوي رف من كلهم يهودا أتيت باخ هاتين بقرا دا أناش دا مكاسيلي يهودا كوكاف دا ميدبار هو كوكافاك
Okay, now let's take a look at the text again here. And the only thing that they said was the star that leads the way is your star. There was other fluff in there, but that's all they said. What they didn't say was, lift up your eyes and look at the cloud and the light within it and the stars surrounding it, referring to a nebula, specifically the Orion Nebula. We're going to see why here in just a second. So remember, Judas said he knew where Jesus came from. In the film, they did not mention it. He only said it was a boundless realm. He said that I'm not worthy to utter where you came from. The proper thing is that he said that to Jesus that he knew that he came from the realm of Barbelo. Barbelo, right here, refers to the first emanation of Yahweh in cosmogony. This refers to the apex, where it refers to the cloud or the nebula. When we take a look at the Gospel of Judas, and we scroll down, we can see in the overview Jesus' death is simply a final way for him to leave the realm of the flesh and return to the luminous cloud. Okay, that luminous cloud. This is the secret. This is where heaven is. Okay. All right. So with that, let's take a look at this next video I've got here. I hope I'm doing this in the proper order here. I just stuck this together real quick. So here we go.
Boval's insights shed new light on the magical death rites for the pharaoh, child of Horus, as the builders of the pyramids envisaged. After 70 days, the mummy was taken west to the land across the Nile, the Giza necropolis. As one crosses the Milky Way to Orion's belt, where the pyramids stand as the gateway to Isis and Osiris, gods of life after death.
I'm taking you inside the Pyramid of Unas. And here are the oldest religious writings in history, the pyramid texts. The meaning of these texts were nearly forgotten, because Egyptologists saw in them mainly a sun religion. But this isn't a religion of the day and the living. This is a religion of the night and of the dead. These texts repeatedly tell us that the king becomes a star in the kingdom of Osiris, in the constellation of Orion.
The king becomes a star in the kingdom of Osiris, in the constellation of Orion. So within the constellation of Orion exists a kingdom. And within that kingdom, it is the kingdom of Osiris. And that is where the people become stars. Okay? That's really important. So let's take a look at the next piece of the puzzle here. Okay, this is from an old clip of mine. This right here, Manly Hall, defines Osiris. Okay? So we'll understand a little bit more, and a little bit more confirmation about what Osiris actually is.
Came to the seventh gate. So strangely enough, in a Muslim book, the guardian of that gate was Christ. He comes into the presence of the Great One. In this sense, in Egypt, we follow very closely the story in the Apocalypse of John. But we come to the great figure walking among the candlesticks, carrying the stars.
The great figure walking among the candlesticks, carrying the stars. The 7 lampstands, which are actually mentioned in Revelation, are the 7 candlesticks he's referring to. These are the 7 stars in Orion. And what walks right in the middle of the 7 candlesticks is the Lord with the stars and the candlesticks, the one carrying the stars, and this is Osiris. Osiris is actually what sits in the center of the trapezium that carries the stars, which are the whole nebula, the Orion Nebula.
This is a symbol of that which is above these limitations. That is a release in which the individual, having step by step overcome the impediments which he has placed upon himself or has permitted to society to place upon him through wrong education and wrong laws, that the individual comes into the presence of Osiris in Egypt and comes into the presence of the Lord with the stars and the candlesticks.
Lord with the stars and the candlesticks.
Religion, there is some, whether it is Shanti in China or whether it is Mahavarakana in Buddhist Japan, all of these symbols represent coming face to face with the truth.
I need to tell you this so that you understand what I'm going to say about the Giza Plateau. It has been well established by my colleague, the engineer and archaeoastronomer Robert Roval, in his book, The Orion Mystery, that there is an astonishing resemblance between the pattern of the 3 great pyramids on the ground at Giza and the pattern of the 3 stars of Orion's belt. And we need to understand that immediately that the constellation of Orion was not just any old constellation to the ancient Egyptians, it was actually the most important constellation in the sky.
Okay, so that's where we have our pattern. They're showing us the pattern between the lower world and the upper world. Now I'm going to show you, remember that Barbelo is the first emanation of Yahweh, so it represents the area which is the cloud. Okay, so let's take a look a little bit more of what this represents. This is from the Ladder of Lights in 1975. It's Kabbalah. And what we have here is Sephira Kether. Kether is that very top disc that you see on the Tree of Life. It's the crown, it's the summit. And right here he has World of Expression, Prima Mobile, and then he has Nebula. And it says the treetop at last. We are at the very apex of the middle pillar, which can make no further progress on the Tree of Life unless we leave it altogether into nothing above, or fall back to Malkuth and start all over again. Down here it says, Kether not only signifies a crown in the regal sense, but also the summit of any height, especially a mountain or a pillar. So what were those patterns of the pyramid showing us with the missing capstone? Remember we just read that about the apex being the nebula, right? The peculiar architecture of the pyramid shows in itself the drift of the metaphysical thought of their builders. The apex, highlighted here, is lost in the clear blue sky of the land of the pharaohs and typifies the primordial point lost in the unseen universe when it started the first race of the spiritual prototypes of man. So the apex represents the nebula, which is missing from the top of the pyramid. It's to show us that that is the primordial point of man. we've already seen from the Ladder of Lights, the nebula represents Kether. It represents the apex. This is the imperishable realm of Barbelo. This is the luminous cloud that Jesus was going to return to after shedding his skin, that is mentioned in the Gospel of Judas specifically. Judas was, as we read, lift up your eyes and look at the cloud and the light within it and the stars surrounding it. The star that leads the way is your star. Judas lifted up his eyes and he saw the luminous cloud and he entered it. So he entered the luminous cloud, not some other star. That's the important thing, because this is the kingdom of Osiris, which is the nebula. Osiris is just another name for Yahweh, this area which is Yahweh, Yahweh being the invisible angels located in the center of the trapezium of the Orion Nebula. The kingdom of Osiris, which sits outside of it, the whole nebula where all those stars are. These are all the stars where people became stars in Orion. So this goes all the way back into the ancient Egyptian mysteries, see. Now let's take a look at the symbol for Osiris. This is from E.A. Wallace Budge. He was the Egyptologist that deciphered a lot of the pyramid texts and so forth. The group of wedges which we read, Asari, the first has the well-known meaning of tent. That's what you see right here. And the meaning of eye, and is placed inside the sign for tent. That's what this is right here. And you can see it's a vortex. It's the black hole of whatever. And that would be located somewhere between these, or somewhere within inside this triangle. Since we don't really know exactly, we can't really see it since it's invisible. We know it's located somewhere in there. NASA or Cornell University, a year after I discovered it, said that there was probably a black hole somewhere in the middle of this trapezium area. And if you notice, the pyramid and its angles also matches the slopes of what we see on the trapezium. So this area represents Osiris. So it says, now the sign is followed by two other cuneiform characters. These form a title of Asari and are read in Sumerian, Ludug, and they mean good man or being. Thus we have Asari, the good being, but we find in the Egyptian text that one of the principal titles of Osiris is Un-Nefer, and that means good being. And it seems clear that the title is the Egyptian translation of the cuneiform characters meaning good man or being. So there's little doubt that the Egyptian Osiris, is the equivalent of the Babylonian Asari. So you can see this place has many different names depending on the culture, depending on the text that you've read and so forth, but it represents the apex. It represents the first emanation, and this is the area that Jesus said he was going to return to. This also is very interestingly similar to what we hear from people like Ellen G. White and stuff like this. Her story was slightly different, but the basic context of it, where Christ or Jesus or God is inside the Orion Nebula area, is very, very similar, very close. Close enough to pay attention to here, because we have the same thing going on. So we can see this cross-reference of the stuff we have going on here, as well as Manly Hall showing us that Osiris is the Lord with the stars and the candlesticks. This is also the same thing we see in these cathedrals. But let's continue. This is a picture of Osiris right here inside the solar boat that we see. Notice the solar boat has a very specific design. And notice Osiris, he sits right in the middle of that solar boat. So let's take a look here. What have we got next? An overlay, and see what the overlay shows us. So, now remember, Osiris symbol is an eye inside of a tent. And that would be the triangle with an eye inside of it. And we just saw Osiris sitting in the center of the solar boat. So, here is our image, and so now we're just going to move the opacity. All the aspect ratios are the same. Nothing's been changed as far as the aspect ratio. And so you can see that the solar boat is the same. Look at the front stem pointing upwards, right there, right on the money. The dimensions of the boat, as you can see where this line moves across here. And this is Osiris right here, which is the trapezium, which matches his symbol, which is what we also saw in Dendera. The dimensions of the boat are the same, and you can see where it crimps in the back here and comes up. So it comes all the way up, crimps, and comes back up. So there's our solar boat, Osiris sitting in the center of it, which is the eye within inside the tent, the luminous cloud that Jesus is going to return to after shedding his skin. And then, of course, we have the king becoming a star. See, Judas was going to become a star, and he entered the luminous cloud. Okay, so let's take a look here. So we have in Utterance 440, the king asks for admittance to the sky. If you love life, O Horus, upon this life of truth, do not lock the gates of heaven, do not bolt its bars. And down here we have the king becomes a star. And it says, Lo, he has come as Orion. Lo, Osiris has come as Orion. Good one, said his mother. Air, said his father. Conceived a sky born of dusk. Sky conceived you in Orion. Dusk gave birth to you in Orion. Who lives by the God's command, you shall live. You shall rise with Orion in the eastern sky. You shall set with Orion in the western sky. Right here is a picture of the constellation of Orion. We have our stars of Orion, the 7 stars of Orion, and walking in the midst of the 7 candlesticks. One like on the Son of Man. See, this is the Lord with the stars and the candlesticks. Right here. This is Osiris in the solar boat right here. This is the luminous cloud that Jesus was going to return to in the Gospel of Judas. The luminous cloud that Noah entered into in the secret revelation of John in the Gnostic texts. The same luminous cloud. And it says in the pyramid text, you will rise with Orion and you'll set with Orion. And that's exactly what this does right here. We'll play this one more time.
In his book, The Orion Mystery, that there is an astonishing resemblance between the pattern of the 3 great pyramids on the ground at Giza and the pattern of the 3 stars of Orion's belt. And we need to understand that immediately that the constellation of Orion was not just any old constellation to the ancient Egyptians, it was actually the most important constellation in the sky.
Okay, and then so we have the pattern of the stars of Orion's belt, patterning what we see in the sky. The pattern of the pyramids. Why is that? Why is the apex missing? The apex represents the nebula, as we read in the Ladder of Lights. The pattern that we see is the same in the Mayans were telling us. The 3 hearthstones of creation with the Orion Nebula in the center. The act of seating the stones in the triangular pattern of the hearth created an image on the face of the earth and in the sky at the same time. Those 3 pyramids were showing us that mirror. The triangle formed by these 3 hearthstones at the center is in the Mayan, is the area the Mayan identified as the place of origin, the seat of creation, represented by the smoke that comes out of the burning fire, which is the Orion Nebula. The seed of creation, this is the first emanation right here. This represents the nebula, this represents heaven. So there we go, the Gospel of Judas that we see, and him becoming a star. Him becoming a star, Judas matches what we see in the Egyptian mysteries, where people became a star in Orion, in the kingdom of Osiris, which was inside the Orion constellation, which represents the luminous cloud, the solar boat. They're talking about the same thing. This is where Jesus was actually going to enter, and this is where he was going to become a star, just like all of these other people.
Yehuda, Kukav, Damidapar, Hukukava.